From million-dollar motorcycles to "I'm so broke." That's the shocking downfall of Paul Teutul Senior after American Chopper made him a household name.
That's you know what? Get the here.
In his bankruptcy filing, he revealed he had almost nothing left, just a few personal items and debts piling up. Even more surprising, his son, Paul Teutul Junior, filed for bankruptcy the same year. The empire didn't just fade, it collapsed. This is the tragedy behind the American Chopper cast. A truck, a welder, and a movie that changed everything. Paul Teutul Senior came back from the Vietnam War with no plan. He had served in the Merchant Marines, spent time on ships most people his age never saw, and returned to Yonkers, New York, with no degree and no connections. What he had was a welding skill and a truck. That was the entire business. One man driving around taking whatever metalwork jobs came his way. Most people would have stayed small. Paul didn't. Year after year, he picked up contracts, hired workers, and turned that one truck operation into Orange County Iron Works, a steel fabrication company with over 70 employees. It wasn't glamorous. It was hot, grinding, physical work, but it paid. Even while running a successful steel business, motorcycles kept pulling at him. He'd watched Easy Rider in 1969, and something about those choppers and open roads never left his head. For 30 years, bikes stayed a hobby. Then in 1999, at 50 years old, he made the jump. He took his welding skills, his reputation, and his son, Paul Jr., and founded Orange County Choppers. Junior had been working at his father's steel company since he was 12. He didn't learn design in a classroom. He learned it by cutting and shaping metal alongside a father who expected perfection and had a temper when he didn't get it. By the time OCC launched, the talent was real. The tension between father and son was just as real.
And don't bother coming in tomorrow, get your terminated.
Their first major moment came at Daytona Bike Week. Paul Senior showed up with a bike called True Blue, and the reaction was immediate. Discovery Channel noticed. In 2002, American Chopper hit television screens. A father and son building custom motorcycles while arguing about everything. The bikes were stunning. The fights were explosive. Within a few seasons, it became the most watched show on Discovery. Not the most watched motorcycle show. The most watched show, period. Millions tuned in every week for the chaos, the thrown tools, the slammed doors. That dynamic turned a small shop into a brand worth tens of millions. T-shirts, toys, corporate sponsorship deals, and bikes commissioned by major companies. Paul Senior went from a guy with a welding truck to the face of an empire. And nobody watching at home had any idea how fast it was all about to come apart. The building that was designed to fail. Orange County Choppers once had a headquarters so big it had its own cafe, bowling alley, arcade, and a growing list of financial problems. The building in Newburgh, New York wasn't a workshop. It was a showroom, museum, restaurant, and gift shop all under one roof. Construction costs hit around $13 million. For a company building a few dozen bikes a year, that number never made sense. But Paul Senior wasn't building for efficiency. He was building for television. A massive headquarters looked incredible on camera. Tour buses showed up. Fans bought merchandise. The Discovery Channel had a backdrop that screamed success, but television money doesn't work like a paycheck. One season, the network writes big checks. Next season, ratings shift and the budget tightens. Meanwhile, property taxes arrive every quarter. Insurance doesn't care about your ratings. Payroll hits every 2 weeks, whether or not a single camera is rolling. By 2011, the town of Newburgh filed a lawsuit claiming OCC failed to pay $18,000 under a tax break agreement. That wasn't one missed payment. That was a pattern. Orange County Choppers had quietly stopped being a motorcycle company. It was a television production disguised as one. The bikes were content. The building was a set. Take the cameras away and the math collapses. OCC surrendered the headquarters to avoid foreclosure. In March 2016, Diamond Properties bought it for $2.3 million, less than 18 cents on every dollar it costs to build. That wasn't a business transaction. That was a fire sale. And behind every square foot of that building was a lesson nobody at OCC learned in time. You can't build permanent infrastructure on temporary money. the father who fired his own son and valued him at zero. In 2008, millions of people watched Paul Teutul Senior fire his own son on national television. Tools were thrown, voices cracked walls, and then it was over. Paul Jr. was out. But this wasn't just a family fight. Jr. owned 20% of Orange County choppers. The firing triggered a buyout clause meant to determine the fair market value of his stake. The appraiser Paul Sr. hired came back with a number that made national headlines: $0. The son who designed the Fire Bike, the Black Widow, and dozens of the bikes that built the brand was told his ownership was worth nothing. Jr. fought back. In December 2010, judges ruled the buyout clause unenforceable. He kept his 20% on paper. But winning in court didn't fix what had broken everywhere else. Father and son now communicated through attorneys. Contracts replaced conversations. Legal filings replaced phone calls. What nobody knew at the time was how badly Jr. was struggling behind the scenes. In his book, The Build, he admitted he'd been leaning heavily on Vicodin during the peak OCC years. Painkillers got him through 18-hour welding sessions. The deadlines were relentless. The pressure from his father was constant, and the pills made it manageable until they didn't. Marriage in 2010 and faith helped him pull away, but the damage didn't vanish overnight. Jr. wasn't the only one who left. His brother Michael quit OCC after the firing and joined him at Paul Jr. Designs. Paul Sr. saw it as a second betrayal. Forgiving either son didn't come easily. The legal settlement even barred Jr. from designing motorcycles for a stretch. The one thing he was best at in the world was taken off the table right when he needed it most. Paul Sr.'s bankruptcy. In February 2018, Paul Teutul Senior walked into bankruptcy court with paperwork that told the real story. He listed $1.8 million in assets against $1.07 million in liabilities. Sounds manageable until you see the monthly numbers. Income, roughly $1,570. Expenses, $12,612. That left about $2,400 a month to service over $1 million in debt. The debts came from every direction. Crawford wanted $51,000 in back property taxes. Maine's paper and food service claimed nearly $38,000. Credit card companies had filed 8 separate lawsuits totaling $66,000. The Montgomery mansion was heading to foreclosure. What made it worse was the visibility. Paul Sr. wasn't some anonymous business owner working through a rough patch. He was a TV personality. Every filing became public. Every debt got reported. Every asset was scrutinized down to a desktop computer valued at $25. The personal property section read like a garage sale. 3 vehicles, a 2009 Corvette, a 2010 Challenger, a 2011 Camaro. Household furnishings worth $500 total. 3 dogs, a few old pistols worth about $200. No jewelry, no artwork, no stash of valuable motorcycles. The man who built 6-figure custom bikes had almost nothing left. He tried selling the mansion for $2.49 million, already $500,000 less than he wanted. No takers. By 2019, it sold for $1.5 million. And that price included tools, equipment, and farm animals on the property. Every cent counted. Bankruptcy didn't happen after everything collapsed. It happened while Paul Sr. was still trying to hold on, still showing up, still acting like the brand had a future. The show made him look powerful. The court filings showed how exposed he really was. When your partner calls it fraud. Thomas Derbyshire put $3 million on the table. The plan was a new television project starring Paul Teutul Senior alongside Rusty Coons from Sons of Anarchy. On paper, it looked like the perfect comeback vehicle. A recognizable face from American Chopper paired with someone from one of the biggest shows on cable. Investors, a production budget, and a built-in audience. Everything was in place. Then, according to the lawsuit Derbyshire filed in 2017, Paul Sr. treated those $3 million like a personal checking account. The allegations were specific. Paul Sr. allegedly delayed production for an entire week to go on a fishing trip. He refused to work with actors who had already been contracted and paid. He secretly funneled money from the production budget to cover his son Michael's salary without telling anyone. He made a side deal trading dog food to his girlfriend's animal rescue operation. He grabbed free gear for his shop, all off the books. None of this had anything to do with making a television show. Derbyshire's legal team called it fraud. Paul Senior's lawyers denied everything, but the lawsuit didn't go away. It sat in court records, painting a picture of an investor who watched millions disappear into personal expenses and unauthorized payments, while the project he funded went nowhere. And Derbyshire wasn't the only one chasing Paul Senior through the courts. JTM Motorsports was holding his 2009 Corvette ZR1 over $17,000 in unpaid work. By 2019, a federal judge found him in contempt of court for refusing to pay. But the worst moment came during court-mandated mediation for the JTM case in July 2018. Paul Senior became so agitated during the session that he reportedly yelled and lunged across the table at opposing counsel. 3 court officers came upstairs to remove him from the room. His representatives later claimed security wasn't involved. Multiple sources said otherwise. Meanwhile, reports surfaced about something bigger, an alleged scheme tied to Paul Senior's OC Roadhouse project in Florida that reportedly swindled Central American investors out of $12 to $15 million. Paul Senior was never formally charged, but the allegations added another layer to a pattern that was becoming impossible to ignore. Money comes in, promises get made, money disappears, and investors get left holding nothing. There was also the matter of Hudson Valley Merchandising. A bankruptcy trustee representing the OCC subsidiary sued Paul Senior in 2015, alleging he had transferred $1.4 million out of the company after filing for bankruptcy in 2013. That accusation suggested he was actively moving money around to keep it away from creditors. Not the behavior of someone trying to make things right, the behavior of someone trying to protect whatever was left. Every lawsuit told a slightly different story, but they all pointed in the same direction. The business model that built Orange County Choppers didn't just fail on its own. It was helped along by decisions that treated other people's money as something that didn't need to be accounted for. The son who filed bankruptcy. After the firing, after the lawyers, after the courtroom ruling that said his 20% stake couldn't be taken from him, Paul Jr. started over. In 2019, he launched Paul Jr. Designs out of Ship Bottom, New Jersey. 7 employees, a small shop, a lot of pressure, but the work was good. Big names came calling. Junior built themed bikes for Geico, the U.S. military, and utility companies promoting safety campaigns. He redesigned a Coleman grill to look like a motorcycle engine, and it sold 12,000 units. He constructed a tribute bike from steel pulled out of the World Trade Center wreckage and helped raise over $1 million for charity. By 2024, Paul Jr. Designs had completed 47 custom builds with price tags ranging from $150,000 to $500,000. It looked like he'd escaped, but the same economic forces that were strangling his father's operation were closing in on him too. The 2008 financial crisis didn't just crash the stock market, it gutted the custom motorcycle industry. High-end bikes went from luxury status symbols to expenses nobody could justify. Orders dried up, clients disappeared. Overhead stayed exactly the same. In March 2018, the same month his father filed for bankruptcy, Paul Jr. submitted his own filing. Father and son, separated by lawsuits and silence, both standing in front of judges admitting they couldn't pay their bills. Junior's bankruptcy wasn't about reckless spending or shady deals. It was about building a business on television fame and then watching that fame fade while the invoices kept arriving. But the Teutul family collapse had one chapter that almost nobody talks about. Daniel Teutul was never on American Chopper. He didn't yell at the cameras. He didn't throw wrenches. He ran the family's original business, OC Ironworks, which Paul Senior handed over to him in 2004. That handoff looked like a gift. It wasn't. In 2007, a bankruptcy trustee filed a complaint accusing Daniel and his family of stripping OC Ironworks of everything valuable. Machinery, workers, and customer accounts all allegedly moved into a new company without paying fair value. The old company went bankrupt. Creditors got nothing. The trustee called it fraud. When the case settled in December 2008, Daniel was ordered to pay $500,000. Paul Senior and Paul Jr. each owed $50,000. Daniel's fine was 10 times larger. The average American salary in 2008 was around $40,000. His penalty represented more than a decade of typical earnings. But here's where Daniel's story breaks from the pattern. He spent years rebuilding OC Iron Works and grew the operation beyond what it had ever been. He launched a second company called Gabriel Steel. By 2024, he had expanded his workforce from 35 employees to 69 and turned a scandal into one of New York's strongest steel fabrication businesses. And here's the detail that almost never gets mentioned. Daniel built the massive OCC headquarters that made his brothers famous on television. He designed it, fabricated the steel, and managed the construction. The building that became synonymous with Orange County choppers was Daniel's work, not theirs. He never got credit. He was never the face. But he built the literal foundation. Mikey's battle nobody joked about. On television, Paul Teutul was the comic relief. The easygoing younger brother who made people laugh while his father and Paul Jr. screamed at each other over motorcycle designs. Fans loved him because he felt like the most human person in the room. He wasn't the genius builder. He wasn't the angry boss. He was just Mikey. But behind the jokes was someone quietly falling apart. Mikey started working at his father's ironworks when he was 14. He answered phones, cleaned up, and did whatever odd jobs needed doing. When OCC exploded into a $30 million business, Mikey was there for all of it, but never at the center. He sometimes helped with builds. He even made his own bike in Season 3. But compared to Junior's natural talent, Mikey always looked like an outsider in his own family's shop. The producers leaned into that image. It made viewers root for him. What viewers didn't see was the drinking. Mikey's battle with alcohol got bad enough that Paul Senior kicked him out of Orange County choppers entirely. He disappeared from episodes. Behind the scenes, he had hit bottom. In December 2009, he checked into rehab. It was either fight for his life or lose everything. The financial damage stacked up alongside the personal damage. In 2004, Mikey bought a house from his mother for $150,000. By 2009, he sold it for $460,000, losing $90,000. His net worth dropped from $2 million to $1 million. After rehab and court battles, he came back to OCC as assistant general manager. Not because he wanted to, but because he needed the income. Years later, in a podcast, Mikey admitted something that explained a lot about why he stayed so long despite the chaos. "I always wanted my father's approval," he said. "When you get that from your father, it gives you a sense of self-worth." That need kept him orbiting a business that was burning down around everyone inside it. But Mikey also tried to build something of his own. He opened the Wolfgang Gallery in Montgomery, New York, showing abstract paintings full of wild colors and raw emotion. The gallery became a community space where local artists could display their work too. He launched Far Q products, selling pasta sauces with truffle flavors. He created a children's music band called Michael and Jello with an educator, writing songs about multicultural themes. He sold t-shirts and posters through his own company. None of these ventures made him rich. The music project faded by 2016 due to money problems. The pasta sauces disappeared from shelves after a few years. The gallery quietly shut its doors by 2025. The designer who got called a cake decorator. Jason Pohl walked into Orange County choppers in 2004 as the new senior designer, and for a while everyone was impressed. His sketches were different from anything OCC had done before. Futuristic lines, bold shapes, concepts that pushed custom motorcycles into territory most builders wouldn't touch. Paul Senior liked it. The crew liked it. It felt like OCC was evolving. Then the internet decided it wasn't. Fans started tearing Jason's designs apart online. The sketches didn't look like real motorcycles, people said. They looked like science fiction props. Too wild, too detached from what a chopper was supposed to be. Jason could handle outside criticism. What he couldn't handle was when it came from inside the building. During Senior versus Junior, Paul Senior looked at one of Jason's finished builds on camera and called it a cake decorator. Not in private, not in a constructive conversation. On national television in front of the entire crew and millions of viewers, Jason broke down. He later said that having the owner trash his work in front of everyone crushed him. That moment stuck with him for years. It got worse. In the 2011 build-off, Jason helped design a tank-like bike with flamethrowers. The internet laughed at it. Critics said it looked like something out of a video game, not something you'd actually ride. The harder Jason tried to push creative boundaries, the more he became the punchline. After Paul Senior filed for bankruptcy in 2018, Jason's screen time dropped fast. The money was drying up, the show was fading, and there wasn't room for a designer whose work divided the audience. Jason hit rock bottom. By March 2020, he officially left OCC. He moved to Florida in 2021 and eventually landed a role as a SolidWorks brand ambassador. Slowly, quietly, he started rebuilding. His estimated net worth today sits around $700,000. Not what it was during the peak years, but stable. Earned without anyone calling his work a joke on camera. Jason wasn't the only one who left OCC carrying scars from broken promises. Cody Connolly had been at the shop since he was 14 years old. Viewers literally watched him grow up on television. Paul Senior paid for him to attend the American Motorcycle Institute. In one episode, Paul Senior handed Cody the keys to a custom chopper on camera and told him it was his. Cody says he never actually received that bike. The keys were theater, a TV moment designed to look generous that meant nothing once the cameras stopped rolling. Cody left OCC in October 2007 at just 20 years old and filed a lawsuit claiming the company used his face on merchandise without paying him. He asked for $250,000. The case settled in 2011, and Cody disappeared from the motorcycle world completely. Today he runs Revel Ranch Excavation, a demolition company in Pine Bush. He's married with a daughter and barely posts online. The kid who welded gas tanks on national television now digs through dirt far from any spotlight. Paul Senior still thinks there's one more show left. By 2025, the American Chopper cast is scattered across the country, each person rebuilding in ways that reflect exactly how close they stood to the center when everything fell apart. Paul Teutul Senior is 76 years old. He still builds bikes at the OC Museum and Roadhouse in Clearwater, Florida. His net worth sits around $500,000, a fraction of the empire he once controlled. He's been with his girlfriend Joan for over a decade and stays close to his daughter Kristen, who works as a pediatric nurse in New York. He posts on YouTube, grips handlebars, and talks like the old days never ended. Recently, he's been hinting at a new television project, something already filmed featuring Rick, Mikey, and Jim. But certain key cast members may be missing from the lineup. Paul Jr.'s name hasn't come up. That absence says everything. Paul Jr.'s net worth has climbed back to around $2 million. He still builds bikes and judges competitions. He wrote a book. He launched a podcast that pulls in 250,000 listeners every month. He partnered with Rough Cycles in Germany to design an electric bike retailing for roughly $8,000. His PJD apparel line brought in over $2 million in 2024. He's auctioned custom builds for veterans' causes, raising close to $1 million. By every measure, Junior rebuilt successfully. But he and his father still haven't spoken. The last real blow-up was over the ABC supply bike, and the silence has held since then. In 2021, Paul Senior showed up to his grandson Hudson's birthday party. It was the first time father and son had been in the same room outside of work since 2015. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was a visit. The 2018 show revival was supposed to change things. Discovery brought American Chopper back for another season, built around the idea of Paul Senior and Paul Jr. repairing their relationship while rebuilding their businesses. Fans hoped it would be a turning point. It wasn't. The cameras came back, but the healing didn't. When the season ended, distance replaced dialogue again. Fans kept waiting for the big reunion that never came. The years didn't soften anything between the Teutels. If anything, the distance just made it obvious that nobody was trying to close the gap. Father and son built separate lives, separate businesses, separate futures, all designed to make sure they'd never depend on the same machine again. Don't miss the videos on screen now, they're just as interesting. Catch you in the next one.